We made it.
Oh, I'm sorry. The old picky disc can't come to the phone right now. Why? 'Cause it's dead. No, it's not. It's still very much alive, and it is still Pick a Disc, the podcast where someone picks a disc to talk about for whatever reason they want to. I'm your host, Matt Latham, and the guest today is Leah Jones from the She Will Rock You podcast. You may remember Leah from the Paramore episode where we talked about Riot, and she's back to talk about Taylor Swift's reputation. We talk about quite a lot of stuff actually, particularly a bit of a history lesson in the pop culture world of Twitter and the circumstances leading to almost a year/2 year silence from social media, and just basically one of the biggest comebacks like the internet ever seen. It's a very interesting album, very interesting artist as well, and we get into a lot of that in the conversation that we have. As always, before I press play on the interview, it's the bit where I'm just shilling out all the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, under the Pick a Disc. There's a Discord server where you can join and talk about music you're listening to, talk about the podcast if you really want to. I mean, it's not essential that you talk about the podcast in there, but if you want to say, when you want to pretend that you like it and tell me that you like it, you know, you can just lie and say that you're enjoying it. And also, what you can do is that you can lie and say you're enjoying it to other people online and all those little review apps that podcasts are having nowadays. And you can lie and tell people to listen to this, and then they can hate you forever. But before you do that, at least listen to the Taylor Swift conversation that myself and Leah are about to have. And let's do it. I'm here again with Leah from She Will Rock You, here for the second time. How you doing, Leah?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be back for a second pick.
Yeah, he was here, I think we recorded last November, so by the time this airs, it'll probably be a year since the last appearance where we talked about Paramore's Riot, which I think I had about 12 hours of prep.
Yeah, we had a little bit more prep time this go around.
Yeah, there's a lot of tests, but no, I really enjoyed the listening to Paramore's Riot album, and I enjoyed listening to the album you've picked today as well, and I think I'm going to jump right to it because I think there's a lot to talk about in this one. And so without ceremony, Leah, why don't you tell the listeners the disc that you've picked for us to talk about today?
I have picked Taylor Swift's Reputation album.
Yep, Reputation was released on the 10th of November 2017 on Big Machine Records, following her fifth album, 1989. Why have you picked this album?
I think it kind of started as a joke when I said, if you ever want to talk about Taylor Swift album, pick me. And then it didn't become a joke anymore. And you're like, yeah, let's do Taylor Swift. And so I actually went back and forth for like a day. I was like, do I pick Reputation? Because it's now my favorite Taylor Swift album. It hasn't always been. Or do I pick Red? Because I think this episode's dropping the day that the Red re-record comes out. And there's a lot of stories to tell about Red too. And Reputation ultimately won because I think it is Taylor's most underappreciated album. I think a lot of people don't, quote, get it the way that they need to get it to appreciate it. So if I can assist in demystifying why it's an important album, I'll help.
So yeah, before we talk about the album, do you remember the first time you listened to Taylor Swift, or how you discovered her? Or?
I don't remember the very, very first time because I was probably in 5th or 6th grade because her debut album came out in 2006? I gotta look it up real quick. I used to be really into country music, and every day after school I'd watch country music television where they played the current music videos and stuff, and they started playing the Tim McGraw music video. And most artists who were featured on country music TV at that time were like 40-year-old people, and then there's the 16-year-old on TV, and I was like, that's someone that, okay, it was, I cannot find when her debut album came out. That's because I didn't search debut album. I just searched Taylor Swift. It would have been around 2006, and I was like, I really like this. And then I've been a casual fan ever since then. I sang Taylor Swift in my high school talent show. And it probably wasn't until like the Lover release that I became a really hardcore fan. And now I stalk every move that she makes on social media because we're in a very confusing time as the Taylor Swift fandom. We don't know what's happening day to day. We're supposed to be getting Red music, and then yesterday, 2 days ago, we got a 1989 single. So, like, what's happening?
Yeah, there's particularly the narrative of Taylor Swift's relationship with social media is pretty much paramount in the lead up to Reputation as well. So it's so yeah, but before we talk about that, this obviously wasn't the first album of hers that you listened to. Was it the self-titled?
Yeah, it would have been her debut album would have been the first one.
Okay, because my knowledge of Taylor Swift in the UK, I can't remember. I have quite vivid memories of I think of Love Story doing really well over here. I don't know if You Belong With Me around the same, which I think it was released at the same time, was as big. But Love Story I remember hearing on the radio quite a bit, and it was always one of those that was like one of those like guilty pop pleasures that, and in the back of my head was always kind of like a one-hit wonder or something. And I don't know when, particularly in the UK, she suddenly became Taylor Swift as we know Taylor Swift to be. I definitely remember. I remember when Red was released because my mum had Red for Christmas the one year, so that was listened to a lot in the house when I was living with my mum and dad. I never really paid much attention to her apart from the odd few singles. I quite like the backstory of we are never ever getting back together, basically writing a song deliberately to piss off the person the song was about.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think I remember listening to Folklore a couple of times when it first came out, but I never really listened to much of the albums of Taylor Swift as a whole. So this is kind of almost new territory. Yes, I definitely didn't listen to any of the songs from this one. I think apart from when Look What You Made Me Do came out, I watched the video about once, I think, and then didn't really listen about it. So it was interesting for me to come back to that. But but I think the reason I say that is because I think the Look What You Made Me Do video and the announcement of the Reputation album, it didn't have that much of an impact on me because I didn't really pay much attention to what Taylor Swift was doing, or from what I was reading, not telling anyone she was doing. So I think when this came out, it was, or at least when the album was announced, or at least when the first single was announced, it was like a massive thing. And I mentioned a few days before recording that the internet suddenly went, particularly Twitter, suddenly went Taylor Swift bonkers around the third quarter of 2017, and I fully understand now the behind the scenes stuff about when suddenly this video came out. So in the lead up to it, are you able to fill in a couple of the gaps of?
Yeah, so we just did a Taylor Swift episode ourselves very recently, so I literally copied my notes leading up to the release of Reputation to recap where the world was at when this album came out. So if you were on Twitter in the late 2010s, you will remember the Taylor Swift is Over party. So basically what happened is we all know that Kanye and Taylor have had a rough history since the 2009 VMAs, in which he interrupted her. The media wanted to make a big deal out of it, about it. There were all these interviews immediately after where they were like trying to make Taylor talk about it. And she said, no, that happened. I'm over it. Like, please stop asking me about it. And the media just wanted to like hound in on her. So she and Kanye have had a little bit of a history. So he's writing an album. I forget which album. Kanye is not relevant to this story. And he calls up Taylor and says, hey, I want to put a line in this song that says, I feel like me and Taylor might still have sex. Why? I made that bitch famous. And he says, well, maybe I should get Taylor's permission to put that line in the song. And so he calls her. Kim films the whole thing. She agrees to the line, I made that bitch famous. But he does not run the line, I feel like me and Taylor might still have sex, by her. So the album comes out. She hears this line. She's not happy about it. And Kim and Kanye release these tapes that make it look like she approved the whole line, when in the undoctored tape, she only approves the "I made that bitch famous" line. So needless to say, the internet did not like this, and they start calling Taylor a snake. Like, they're bombarding her Instagram captions with just like thousands of snake emojis. Hashtag Taylor Swift is over party is trending on Twitter worldwide, which in her documentary she says, do you know how many people have to be tweeting that they hate you to make that trend? And so she disappears off the face of the planet for like 2 years. She goes social media silent. We don't get like a peep out of her. No paparazzi can find her. She's just hiding away, basically working on this album. And while all this is happening, she's also going through a sexual assault case with a radio DJ who, during a radio meet and greet, grabbed her butt, and she didn't like that, and he ended up getting fired. So he sued her for $1 just to make a big deal out of it. She ends up winning her case. And like the day after she wins her case, the "Look What You Made Me Do" video drops, like out of nowhere. She doesn't have an album announcement. She posts a series of 3 videos onto her Instagram that have a snake, and everyone's like, what is happening? And she drops one of the most iconic music videos of all time. That's the very, very fast version. There's obviously a lot more that happens around that time, but that's why Reputation was such a surprise to not just Taylor Swift fans, but to the whole internet, because we hadn't heard from her in like 2 years.
Yeah, so I heard about this kind of social media blackout, and I can kind of remember this whole thing about Taylor Swift's album stuff, but I never really looked into it because, again, I didn't really listen to or pay much attention to Taylor Swift as a whole and stuff, and I think in the process of this, just to try and get an idea of how different Reputation was to some earlier stuff, I had a brief listen to 1989, and I was quite surprised by the fact that I really should have listened to 1989 in 2014, because it does tick quite a lot of boxes for me. It's very similar to a band I really, one of my favourite bands called Churches, where it's very like synth poppy stuff, and so yeah, that's on me for not listening to that a lot all those years ago. But yeah, I think the impact is, particularly when that video dropped, it was like people were going bonkers. I mean, I think people that I followed on Twitter who probably weren't even Taylor Swift fans were retweeting reactions to it. Like, it was the only other thing I can really think of was when there's a very high profile celebrity death where where the timeline just fills up. It was on the scale of that. And we'll talk about the song a lot more detail a bit later on. But it was just like a shock that she's managed to somehow in secret created this with, and pretty much it's like a majority of, well, about half the songs are written by Steinbach and Max Martin, who is like pop song royalty, and Jack Antonoff from Bleachers, because I always getting confused in that, because I think Night Trust is fun, isn't he? And I always get those two mixed up. I always keep thinking those two are the lead singers of the two different things. So you got like kind of like high profile songwriters working with Taylor Swift, and somehow no one knew about it, which was, considering the age of social media and the paparazzi, as you said, the paparazzi couldn't even find her, which is quite an impressive feat in itself.
And not only she did it that first time, but now she's done it 3 whole times, and we still haven't gotten a leak before those. It's kind of crazy. Yeah,
I mean, she must have the best anti-PR team. Yeah, I mean, you got your PR team that can like do that, but somehow manages to stay off the face of the map.
She's got a very legally binding NDA somewhere.
Yeah, either that or people that she works with just will be basically bankrupt and never be able to work again. That's
pretty much.
Yeah. If they even breathe about anything. So, but so the album itself as well. What I have gotten on my notes as well. I remember. I think it's just around the time after we've agreed to do this. There was a Instagram story that you posted on your personal account where it was a Venn diagram of you in the middle of Luke Strutz and Taylor Swift, and I actually, because I wanted to reference that, I've actually got I've got a screenshot of it where it goes.
That's hilarious.
If you make a Venn diagram and Taylor Swift is one side and Luke Strutz is the other, I'm the middle piece. An actual thing I said to Beth Ann Tarpley yesterday. I
did say that when I got my hair cut because I have bangs like Taylor now.
But yeah, so and I think that kind of I think that from the Sheer Rocky podcast and what you've been and other podcasts that you've been on, that kind of sums up your music taste. I think
it really does.
Yeah, so you got the kind of pop side and the rock side stuff, and this leads me to the question I want to ask you as well, because considering the pop side of Taylor Swift and the rock side of the Struts, which we've briefly mentioned, and you've said a few times that they're your favourite band, this album is quite different from both of those things. This is very kind of almost R&B, trap, kind of trap music. It kind of prophesizes the Billie Eilish album by 2 years. So so it kind of like when Billie Eilish, a previous episode that we've done actually, when Billie Eilish comes in and seems to change pop music, this actually could be seen as the lead up to that. So what is it about? So what was it about Reputation that you just struck to that doesn't seem to match with what we as an audience know of your music taste?
So I actually hated the album at first.
Okay.
I remember it came out when I was working in an office job, and like it was mostly girls, mostly like just graduated college girls who we were all into Taylor. And I remember listening to it and I was like, I don't know. It's not Taylor to me. It doesn't feel, it's not the country fearless Taylor that I grew up with. It's not hyperpop 1989. I was like, I don't know. And I revisited it every now and then. And I mean, it has its moments that I loved. And I'd say in the last like 2 years where I took the time to like think about where it was in the moment in history that it was released in Taylor's life, and listen to the songwriting. I think I never gave it a deep enough chance to the first couple times I listened through, because the songwriting I think it's Taylor's best songwriting. People will argue that Folklore and Evermore are her best songwriting, but this is her most personal album of all. It's a very vulnerable album that's half, if this is what the media wants me to be, then fine. I'm going to be it. I'm going to be the man killer, the snake in the media who throws her friends under the bus. But it's also half an album of falling in love, because going into the Reputation, I guess, writing time, she was very lonely and very hurt by people who she called her friends leading into the Taylor Swift Is Over party. And she found Joe, who they're still dating today. And a lot of these songs are actually love songs. I don't want to say in disguise, but they're not your typical Taylor Swift love song where it's like, I love you, why don't you love me back? It's like, we want to have this relationship, but my life is crazy. Like, you got to know what you're signing up for. You've got to understand that like every move we make is going to be picked over and pulled over, and your life is never going to be the same. So you've got to be sure that you want to be in this relationship before we're going to do this. And it starts off this like big, it starts off with Ready For It, which is like this big, strong, like screw the media type song. And it ends on such this sweet piano ballad that leads perfectly into the Lover release that follows. That it's a masterpiece, and I feel bad that I hated it for so long.
But yeah, considering of stuff that I know, it's a very different sound. It's and I mean, I was reading the Pitchfork review, and the Pitchfork review was kind of commenting on that as well.
The Pitchfork review is not nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice in comparison to other albums and reviews it's had and stuff. I thought it was quite reserved in comparison to what it could be. But yeah, because I think a lot of it, particularly when that was reviewing stuff, it was a kind of like, it was a reaction to what Taylor put out before. So like, and which from what I gather was kind of like an evolving, gradual phasing out of country into kind of pure pop, but into pure pop until the synths, until like the synth machine arrived in 1999. So when this kind of goes to be fair, it's very synth heavy, but in a completely different way. It's like there's probably an immediate reaction to, oh, okay, this isn't what we expected from Taylor Swift. And if it was perhaps from another artist that wasn't Taylor Swift, it might have been perhaps initially better received. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of it is because of it was Taylor Swift, not of the songs themselves. Mm-hmm. The thing I noticed well is that it's an album it's an album of two halves from what I listened to. You've got your Steinbach, Max Martin stuff, and Max Martin. I don't know if I've spoken about Max Martin in the podcast. I can't remember. I don't know if I can't off the top of my head think that it has, but I've listened to loads of different podcasts about Max Martin, and Max Martin is one of those where he's a very, I don't want to say he's polarising, he's had a lot of success and he's got a very strong formula, mm-hmm. which has worked. And when you come to this, if you told me this was Max Martin, I wouldn't have recognised it was Max Martin, if I'm honest. Knowing it is, you can kind of hear stuff, but a lot of the Max Martin formula, which is, you hear, particularly in the early noughties, said like, I Want It That Way, Hit Me Baby One More Time, and all other sorts. There's even a few kind of 5 songs, I think, that was written by him. They've all got a very kind of bombastic, heavy, but very formulaic mm-hmm. thing to him. And while the sound's there, the kind of lyrical formula, the lyrical side or the structure of the songs is slightly different. And I think a lot of that is perhaps Taylor's influence of how the songs go and stuff. Yeah, I found that quite a surprise when I suddenly saw it. It was like the first 7 tracks are all Max Martin and Steinbach, and then the first one, well, no, actually, Look What You Made Me Do is Jack Antonoff. Then it's a load of Steinbach and Martin. Then the album kind of is like pretty much all Swift and Antonoff, which saying it ends with a piano ballad. As it ends with a piano ballad, you can kind of see it kind of mellowing out towards the end. It's an interesting mix. It's an interesting mix. I mean, what are you familiar with, like Max Martin? Well, it's probably a silly question, but are you familiar with like Max Martin and Jack Antonoff before this, or?
Jack Antonoff, yes. I was really into Fun that 1 year that Fun existed. In 2011, I'm still sad they're broken up and I'll never see them live. And he was part of Fun. And since like I've revisited Reputation, I've gotten pretty into Bleachers as well. I think that Taylor and Jack are like the perfect songwriting combination. But I'm not as familiar with Max. And isn't it Shellbach?
Shellback.
Shellback. I've been not as familiar with their work outside of 1989.
Max Martin is if you go down his discography and his songwriting credits, it's ridiculous. He's got about 25 US Billboard number 1s behind him, including Hit One More Time, It's Gonna Be Me by NSYNC, I Kissed a Girl, Katy Perry, So What, Pink, quite a few.
So yeah, every top pop song.
Yeah, pretty much Katy Perry, Pink, Britney Spears. Yeah, there's just loads. Just loads. We Are Never Getting Back Together was also Max Martin as well.
That makes sense.
Which, thinking about it, feels like a more traditional Max Martin song than perhaps the stuff on here. But I think that's what I think made it interesting, particularly listening to this as well, because I always found Max Martin quite interesting in how he just has managed to get a formula, and like you can tell it's Max Martin, and I didn't realise it was Max Martin, and that's what I found it quite interesting in that, oh yeah, it is when you think about it. So talking about the songs themselves, I think we're going to go into the track listing, and usually I would ask the guest to choose which song we'll talk about first, but I think we can't. I think because of this album, I think we need to start with Look What You Made Me Do.
Yeah, I think so.
The impact on that is ridiculous, and particularly reading the lead up to it, yeah, it just seems to fill in a lot of gaps of just why the internet went batshit crazy.
Mm-hmm. And they did. Every post, every BuzzFeed article, everything for a good solid week was this song.
Yeah, and why do you think that was?
Well, the media has always loved Taylor, good or bad, how they portray her, and they had nothing to report on for 2 years. But the music video, I watched it again this morning to prep for this, and I forgot how good it is. Like it's aged really well too. Like it was good then, but looking back now that we're several more years removed and we have more layers of Taylor releases, it's aged so well. And there's still Easter eggs that people are picking up in it.
Yeah, I think apparently there's like, from what I was reading earlier, that apparently there's like different names on at the very end, there's like a line of different Taylor Swifts throughout her career. A concept I want to bring back up a bit later on, but and there's like someone I think on Genius has said that there's like different names, and the names are all of actual people. And I think I paused it, and you got like Lena Dunham at one point. You got Selena Gomez in there as well, and on the names and stuff. And I didn't have enough time to go through quite a few of them, but apparently there's like references to other music videos as well, isn't there, right?
Yeah, all the Taylor versions that are under her on the pile of Taylor zombies are all past personas from her music videos. I had another thought and it slipped my brain, so I don't know what I was going to say.
That's fine. It'll come back like about 30 minutes later. That's usually what happens with me anyway. But
I remember when that video first came out, we were all like simultaneously watching it around the world. It was the line of, "I'm sorry, the old Taylor can't come to the phone right now." Why? Because she's dead. That line alone broke Twitter. It just could not handle it.
I can actually remember that. I remember the reaction to that and stuff, and I remember it because I remember watching it once. I was like, "What the bloody hell's going on?" And it was that line I thought was actually quite cheesy, which I think particularly anyone else who was invested, who else those that were invested in this probably was like, "Oh shit!" And I remember podcasts that I listened to were kind of referencing the old Taylor, blah blah blah. It became a meme of itself, and a lot of people refer to it as a one of the stronger comebacks of people in recent years as well. So like it's just all unleashed.
At the time, I think it felt a little cheesy, but looking back, it's aged really well to be less cheesy, which never happens. But considering where she was in her career and she didn't know she was going to come back, and now she's honestly stronger than she was before the Taylor Swift is Over party, it all worked out.
I think as well. I think particularly, I don't know how much they were made an impact in the 90s in the US, but in the UK, the chorus matches the melody of "I'm Too Sexy" by Right Said Fred, which made it prime for ridicule, particularly on the UK kind of satirical sites. And Right Said Richard Fairbass, he's not the most agreeable person at the moment. He's pretty much very anti-vax, and that he's gone down that route, unfortunately. If not ruined this song, it's ruined another song of theirs called Deeply Dippy, which I actually really quite like, but unfortunately, but it's very weird that was like referenced. Part of me, I think it was accidental. Part of me feels like it was accidental, and then someone pointed it out because there's like stories of them being found a week before it was released, saying we can't tell you who this was, who this is, but there's a song about to come out by someone who's been quiet for a long time. Are they okay to use it? And Richard Fairbass said he kind of guessed it was Taylor Swift, and he went yes. And he went, yeah, do it. And then that came out, and it's a weird song. It's a weird melody to reference, but I do honestly think it was an accident, and just basically to avoid a lawsuit.
It's catchy too, though. Like,
yeah. To be fair, it's catchy. Because it was 91. I was 6, and it was one of those songs that, like, pretty much you got that much that primary school kids were singing it. So basically, kids that were like between 4 to 8 years old at school going, "I'm too sexy," and like, man, the teachers must have hated us. Just like had a. But yeah, so I think that didn't help its initial reaction at times. I think so. Like, it had that against it, but as you said, I think it's dated well in many respects as well. Many respects, the structure is quite interesting. The structure is interesting. It kind of dips and changes tempo tempo all the time has those kind of really nice moments where it's just the drum beat on itself, and I think the video is quite interesting, particularly if you want to look into and get like a history lesson of Taylor as well. So and apparently there's a bit where she's in a bath of diamonds, and those diamonds cost $10 million.
Yeah, it was. I was watching it this morning and thinking, how much did this video how much did this video cost to make? Because there's like pretty good CGI, there's an elaborate set, there's like so many costumes, and them editing the multiple Taylors in together. It was a very expensive music video.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I've always found when artists kind of are able to be kind of introspective and look back on stuff to be quite interesting. Like the one that jumps into my head is Eminem's Monster video, where basically he's in the lift and he's seen different stages of his life, and he's actually recreating shots from his videos, some his videos. There's one bit where he's rapping the verses to Monster, but he's staged in the My Name Is video and stuff. And part of me kind of wishes there was a bit more done with that aspect, but I think it's more or less played for a joke at the end. The one video that I tried to see if anyone else made this comparison with, and I've not found it, so I'm going to take the lead on this comparison. I don't know if you've watched the video "Did It Again" by Kylie Minogue.
I did. I watched it this morning.
Yeah. Okay. So, hey, homework, yay. Basically, that was released in '97. It's one of my favourite music videos of all time. In comparison to Taylor Swift, I could probably afford to finance the Kylie Minogue video, because it's very simple. It's very simple. It's whereas like it's the PBS version of whereas Taylor Swift is the multi-billion dollar kind of movie version of it. But the concept of that, and it's one of my favorite videos at the time, is that there's 4 versions of Kylie Minogue, kind of. So you've got Cute Kylie, which is from her first kind of period, when she was with Stock Aitken and Waterman in the like 80s. You've got Indie Kylie, which is when I think was when she was trying to break away from that. So she was working with Michael Hutchinson. She did Where the Wild Roses Are with Nick Cave. There's Sex Kitten Kylie, which was I think around 94 to 97, where she had songs like Confide in Me. And you have Dance Kylie, which was that time as well, and would come again in 2000 when Spinning Around came out. But the the video, and rewatching it, I'm quite surprised that because it's basically her interacting with each other, and considering it was 97, it's quite seamless in the interactions. But the concept is that she's kind of, it's the different versions of herself battling, and it gets quite funny where like she's actually hitting them with chairs and stuff. And I remember watching the Look What You Made Me Do video, and it reminded me of that a lot. And it's quite, again, it's like an invitation to look back into the different style versions of Taylor Swift. And almost self-referential internal battle that she has against herself, or the different versions of herself that came through and stuff. And I think there's some part, and you might need to fill in the gaps of this, but I'm pretty sure that the bits at the very end are references to specific things. So there's the You Belong With Me video. There's the bit where she's kind of crying with the guitar, which I'm guessing is...
That was the Fearless era of where they said that she like cried over all these boys. There's one with her at the VMA where Kanye interrupted her, and I forget what that version of Taylor says, but one of the other ones says, well, stop always playing on the victim, which is what they accused her of when Kanye did his interruption. And I had forgotten about that exchange, and it cracked me up this morning because it's just a really funny ending of that video.
I think it's the bit where she goes, I want to be excluded from this narrative, and everyone just tells her to shut up.
Because that's what she said, and they're like, stop playing the victim.
And there's a bit where it says, oh, you can't be that surprised all the time. And
oh yes, because they at the very beginning of her career, they'd be like, you can't be that happy, you can't be that surprised, you can't be that giggly all the time. She's 17, leave her alone.
But you said that as well, that bit, there was, I think it might have been a Pitchfork review, where they mentioned about the fact that she's always surprised when she wins awards. and links to a BuzzFeed article where 44 times Taylor Swift was surprised she won an award. I was like, okay, and basically much every GIF had, all the GIF hot links had finished, so it was pretty much, this image cannot be found, this image
That's
cannot be found.
hilarious.
Yeah, and I think that might have been the reference to that as well, but and the bit about the receipts, do you know which bit that was referring to?
That's the Kanye, so when the Kanye Kim Taylor thing was happening, everyone had the receipts of the video that Kim released that said that she agreed to it, which later came out that video had been edited and she never agreed to that lyric. And so it started this whole meme about having receipts, having like social media screenshots or video proof of anything that Taylor said or did, or anyone. It's evolved now to be anyone, but there was a time where people were lighting her up with that Kim video, which wasn't even an accurate receipt because it was edited.
I wonder if that was, so was that the first time that kind of thing happened? Because I know there have been.
It's the first memory I have of someone having having the receipts and when all the memes started. So I don't know if that was the actual catalyst or it just made it become more of a mainstream phrase. But that was
receipts.
Yeah, that was my entire feed for weeks was I've got receipts, and it would be about something super petty about, someone's boyfriend hitting on someone else. But that's where I remember it coming from.
Okay. Because I was trying to figure out the term receipts. I can't remember when that came out. So unless it is that Kanye and Taylor Swift kind of dominating like culture again, or society and everything. But so that was Look What You Made Me Do, and the biggie. So aside from that, which other songs jump out to you from this album? If you wanted to turn, when you think of this album, which songs jump out?
Let's jump to Delicate, because if Reputation has a title track, it's Delicate, in my opinion. Because of the line, my reputation's never been worse, so you must love me for me, which is the ultimate theme of this whole album, of falling in love despite being the most hated person out there for a while. She still found the one that she loves. And the Reputation, the Delicate video, I don't think I had watched until this morning. I somehow missed it when it came out. It's actually really kind of sad. It starts out where Taylor is just living her celebrity life, where she's, constantly being flanked by bodyguards. There's a scene where she takes 2 steps forward and the bodyguards move with her. She takes 2 steps back and they move with her. And it's just a life of everything she does is protected and pre-planned and scrutinized, and she's having to put on a fake smile, and she's in a hotel, and she gets this little note, and she becomes invisible and no one can see her, and so she's allowed to do whatever she wants, and she just dances around. I think it's supposed to be a New York City, but it's supposed to be. A lot of the comments on YouTube were interpreting it as this really sweet video of dance where how no one's watching. And I was like, no, it's actually really sad because she can't be herself because the media is always watching and she can't do anything, not even breathe, without someone judging her for it. But the video ends where she walks into a dive bar on the East Side and she makes eye contact with someone who's off screen and she falls in love, which is what this whole album's about. And it's such a sweet song, while being a sad song.
It's interesting you say that because I think Delicate's one of my favourite songs off the album that I really liked. There's a very nice, I think particularly after the last, the first 4 or so, this one kind of dips into a more kind of, it kind of pulls you back in, or it relaxes you from the kind of bombastic, I'm Taylor Swift, I'm here to punch people's head, or for lack of a better term. But it's those that nice kind of almost vocoder effect on the voice, the kind of just very simple kind of synth layer throughout of it. That it's just really nice to listen to, and I think it is quite sweet. It is quite sweet, and I think I agree with your interpretation of the video in that it's basically you got to a point where you're too famous to do anything and you just want to be able to run away and stuff. It was a point where I'm trying to figure out if this album is what I've termed other albums in the podcast called the Money and Bling album, where it's an album about fame. Now, I don't know if it's exactly about fame itself. It's more because a lot of it is actually trying about...
It's about the sad, lonely side of fame. Like,
yeah.
Fame hurts when you get too famous. Like, you can't live a normal life anymore. There's no hope ever again of being normal.
I think, is it Joe Alwyn? This is a...
Yes.
Yeah, and she's still with him now, yeah?
Yes,
so,
they're still together.
And I've seen places where people would interpret this as perhaps being about him or in the lead up to him or just before.
It seems to be the consensus because they did meet during this album writing process and keep their relationship super secret because she was scared that same thing was going to happen that happened in all of her relationships, where the media starts to get a hold of it and scrutinize everything, and she wanted to hold on to this like private world as much as she could. And she's since said, like, she's asked him, are you sure you want to do this? Like, know what you're getting into. I can't undo this once we go public. And they mean it has worked out for them. They still have a very, very private relationship by celebrity relationship standards. So I'm glad for them.
Again, it's that anti-PR team going through. But
yes.
Yeah. Calling back to, I think, the stories that I think you said on She Will Rock You, your podcast, you're talking about Dolly Parton's husband, and like no one seems to cannot find anything about him.
I don't know what Carl looks like. Even a TikTok she posted recently of him for his birthday, it was him in an armchair and you just like saw the back of his head while she gave him his present. So he knows what he's doing. Yeah,
so it's and I think part of me kind of thinks that might be the Dolly Parton school of keeping things behind the scenes and stuff, which is pretty. I think it's pretty good. So, but yeah, no, I think Delicate. I think I was surprised at how much I actually quite like that. It's probably not a kind of song that I personally would probably not the kind of song that I'd listen to that often. But I think in terms of this, and I think in terms of the sequencing of where it is on the album, it's a nice place to kind of move from here to the next phase of it. So, what other songs do you want
to? Getaway Car is my favorite Taylor song. My license plate frame actually says nothing good starts in a getaway car.
So Getaway Car
this
again.
Is pure Jack and Taylor magic. I don't know if you've seen the documentary Miss Americana, but there's a clip of them writing this song, and it's literally like one of those lightning in a bottle songwriting moments where they're writing the bridge, and it's like, I'm in a getaway car, and then they're just bouncing lines off, and I left you in the motel bar, put the money in the bag, and I stole the key. That was the last time you ever saw me. And then they go, oh, there it is. And it's just like, Jack Antonoff has since said, I've only had one moment like that in my life songwriting, and someone caught it on video, and I'm thankful for them. So
actually, I like Getaway Car as well. And again, going back to it, I think it is, and the internet has kind of also repeated this, is that it sounds like it would belong on 1989 because it's very synth pop. It's very churches. And again, I think that in a slightly alternative world, if you had Lauren Mayberry sing this, it would be a churchy song. And so I like it. It's also quite kind of almost upbeat, kind of like just pop. It also stands out, I think, from like the kind of bombastic stuff from earlier as well. But
it's slightly autobiographical. There are theories that it's autobiographical. I don't think anything's ever actually been confirmed. But also, I feel like it could also be seen as the very first dip into that folklore world building that she did that wasn't so personal, kind of like a double meaning. But people have theories that it's about her relationship with Tom Hiddleston. So the very, very short-lived, like 3-month relationship that they had.
Was it only 3 months? From the way people talk about it, it was
like a summer.
Longer.
They moved really, really fast. There's there's a lot to that story that's not relevant to this album discussion, but it just wasn't meant to be, and I think she felt bad about it, which is why in the song, like the Bonnie in the Bonnie and Clyde is the bad guy. Like she leaves him at the bar and takes the money.
Yeah, I think it was this one as well. I think in my notes, this was like the song I was realising that, and I've been struggling to find out how to phrase this is that I shouldn't be as surprised of Taylor Swift's songwriting than I usually am. Because I particularly with like love story and stuff. There's a very unique storytelling style that she's able to do, where it's not just like 4 lines, verse, chorus, a bridge. The lyrics feel a lot more substantial. There's a lot more around it. It doesn't feel like you're just repeating like the same chorus over again.
Mm-hmm.
If it is, there's a lot more substantial kind of lyrical things to it, which is one of my kind of things that attracts me to music or songs. Is that the more kind of dense lyrically songs are, and particularly with this one as well. There's just like the chorus on Genius is about 12 lines long. There's just a lot of stuff in there, and again, it's probably on me for not taking the time to delve into Taylor Swift a lot more. There's probably a couple of people listening to this going, "We told you, Matt, we told you." But I think this is one of the examples, I think, of the songs where it's like, there's a lot of good storytelling in here. There's a lot of like very kind of condensed stuff, and I think I need to go and re-listen to Folklore. I think because I think the only time I really listened to it was as part of like an album listening club online last year. But but I think it's one of those songs I think highlights a songwriting prowess and just how good it is. Because that's one of the things I think that's always that I always thought about Love Story. All the way back in the times where it's like there's actually quite a lot going on in the song in terms of lyrically and the way it builds and stuff, and I think this is kind of that kind of same example of that.
And 1989 was a pop album, so it was very repetitive. Like the songwriting is still great, but it's not this storytelling that she moves into more into this and beyond, especially Folklore. But it gets better and better with each album.
And I think, and I'm guessing that. And I think perhaps listening to what she does later, you said when you revisited this, you kind of appreciate a lot more of the songwriting afterwards, knowing what she's capable of. I think it was I can't remember which song from this music video it was on YouTube, but one of the top comments was that, "Can you believe the same artist released Folklore?"
I saw that comment this morning.
Yeah, I think it might be on Look What Made Me Do. I think, but it's and when I saw that, I was like, you know what? It's amazing that it's the same person. I can't think of another Whiplash thing like that. I mean, she had an album in between that and this, which was Lover. I'm assuming that's like another bridge. It's nothing like Folklore, is it?
No, Lover is very much the segue into the. I don't want to say it's more indie. It's more soft. Whereas Reputation's an album of being hurt and finding love in that hurt. Lover's the head over heels, like gushy, mushy.
Okay.
First true love feelings. I love Lover too. Like when Lover came out, I listened to nothing but Lover for probably 3 weeks straight.
Yeah. So again, there's the use of the vocoder, which was in delicate on the vocals. It happens here as well. Also, there's quite a lot of comparisons to Bonnie and Clyde as well, which I always find quite interesting. And I'm pretty sure Bonnie and Clyde's come up on another episode as well, and I can't remember which one off the top of my head. There's a specific song I think that's appeared in the previous episode, and I can't remember off the top of my head what that was. But but other than that, the Wikipedia article says that says Upi Chatterjee from the Australian magazine The Music also pointed out the song's references to the rock band Bon Jovi song You Give Love a Bad Name. And Enemies Hannah Moria also noticed references to Charles Dickens and the epic war film The Great Escape, which
is the best of times, the worst of crimes.
What else? What other songs did you want to?
I mean, I could talk about all of them. I think one that's underrated that never gets talked about is This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things.
That was one of the ones I was going to mention if you didn't bring it up.
Okay.
It's yeah. So why do you think that?
It is when I like very, very first listened to it was one of my favorites just because it's very catchy. But looking back and after watching her do it live in the Netflix Reputation Tour special, it's one of the like most uplifting songs in her set because of the bridge that's like, here's to the real ones. And here, I forget what the lyric is, and then here's to my mama who had to deal with all this drama. And here's to my baby, something about drive me crazy. But it's like the thank you song for all of her like really true friends and family who stood with her when the world hated her. But also it's very, I don't want to say stabby, that's not a good word, but it's very like to the point where it's like, okay, it's the lyrics are, here's a toast to my real friends. They don't care about the he said, she said. And here's to my baby. He ain't reading what they call me lately. And here's to my mama. Had to listen to all this drama. And then she says, and here's to you. Because forgiveness is a nice thing to do. And then, haha, I can't even say that with a straight face. So it's like, I've moved on past the drama that these people who were supposed to be my friends, I learned who my real friends are, who the people who are actually going to have my back are. And we're not really over it, but we're going to forget that it happened and move on with our lives. I also really like the line of, that's a different song, never mind.
But yeah,
I've listened to this so many times in the last few days that now all the songs have just blurred together in my head.
But I think a few people have mentioned online that they also think there's a few jabs at Kanye in this one.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well.
About it was so nice being friends again. There I was giving you a second chance because like he already screwed her over pretty bad one time and they weren't even friends yet. And so then they finally got back on good terms. This is the line I was looking for. And therein lies the issue. Friends don't try to trick you, get you on the phone and mind twist you. Like if they were really friends again, he wouldn't have tried to manipulate her for his own fame. But we see how it all worked out.
There is very much a explicit reference to Kanye, particularly with the "go on your phone and mind twist you" line. And again, that I can't even say that with a straight face. Which I remember listening to that, I was like, that's actually quite vicious in terms of it's almost like a diss track and stuff. And again, the closest analog I can think of is perhaps, and it's not as visceral, and as graphic, but like particularly in early Eminem, when Eminem would particularly go against and call people out, but he do explicitly. This one is very much if you know the story, it's very easy to spot who it is. But if you was a casual listener, you wouldn't know. That's why I think, like I said, as a whole, for Reputation, to really appreciate it, you have to know the backstory of why it exists and why it came out. But this one's always been one of my favorites because it is a diss track. That's the word I was looking for when I was distracted. But it's also like a really upbeat, catchy diss track. And I love the snaps that like happen. Her background dancers on tour are snapping the whole time, and it's a really catchy song. And every time someone messes something up and ruins it for other people, I start singing this. Well, this is why we can't have nice things.
Because you break them, and I have to take them away.
Okay, I want to briefly mention the one that there's a song that jumped out to me, which I've seen people saying it's like a strange, uplifting kind of love song, which is Gorgeous.
Oh, I love Gorgeous. I was hoping we'd talk about that one.
Yeah, it's another one I quite like, but again, it's like it's kind of like the idea of seeing someone that you kind of like, but you feel at the moment it's unrequited, and kind of like the mental mindset people go to and stuff, and does it in a kind of really catchy way. And again, going back to people thinking, oh, it must be about Joe Alwyn, which it probably ended up being.
Yeah.
So and it's just kind of nice, kind of, it's almost poppy, kind of like another poppy track, but with a nice kind of chorus to it. What was it about? So what is it about you that like? What is it about you that you quite like?
I hate saying because it's so catchy, but because it's so catchy, but also it's like it's a different take on a falling in love song. It's not like I saw you there, we hit it off immediately, and now we're in love. It's like you're over there, and I'm really mad because I can't talk to you because I don't want to mess this up because I'm in a really bad place in my life. But I really still kind of want to talk to you, even though all these feelings are happening. So it's a very emotionally complex love song, which is not new from Taylor, but it's not a common theme that I think a lot of artists explore.
How old was Taylor when this was being written? Be mid to late 20s, wouldn't it?
I think
not 1989, so to the 20, like, yeah, but 27, 28.
Let me see. I want to say 25 when she was writing it. I feel like there's a lyric specifically that references being 25. Let's see. 2017 minus 1989. She was 28.
28. So she's probably now at a kind of a different stage, like a different emotional maturity from perhaps previous albums that she was at. So the way that people comprehend things, particularly as attraction, the way you deal with being attracted to someone in your late 20s, early 30s is going to be different to the way you do it from when you're 18 or 19. So it makes sense that this feels like a different kind of way of doing it than perhaps other albums, because I'm assuming there's probably similar, or she has talked about the same thing but in a different way in previous albums. So it's but in a more black and white thing. Actually, saying that, You Belong With Me jumps into my head actually, where it's kind of like almost there's a story behind it, but it's almost like I like you, but you got a girlfriend, blah 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 blah. Whereas this one has a lot more emotional baggage behind it, or emotional experience behind it. And I again going back to the kind of complex, almost verbose kind of lyrical, how dense it is. It's just there's a lot of stuff going on, and it manages to not feel repetitive in terms of what it's talking about. It feels like the first song sets up the situation, and then each verse kind of adds more layers to it, and again, I really shouldn't be surprised at how dense it is than I have been.
You got to listen to Folklore after this.
Yeah, I need to go and revisit that.
And Evermore. I like Evermore better of the two, but I love them both. Evermore
I've not listened to. There's a special that's on Disney Plus actually, which I think is her playing Folklore, which I might watch. I might have to watch that.
It's so good. It made me appreciate. I said after I watched that, I was like, every album, I don't care who releases it, every album needs something like this to accompany it, because I think it adds so many layers to an album when you get to hear the artist specifically talk about why they wrote the song, and the producers are in the same room, like talking about the process. It just makes the album that much better. So that's a requirement now. Every album that comes out needs a documentary.
But yeah,
that's feasible, right?
Yeah. Every single artist, even the every single artist needs one. Yeah.
I don't care if it's someone making it on their iPhone. Like, it's got to happen.
It's the demo. You have like a SoundCloud full of demos where it's just got to live stream the recordings on Twitch. So if we go to the critical reception, and how well it did, I think it's something, from what I'm gathering, people kind of revisit it and kind of have different takes afterwards. Whereas some places initially was like they weren't with it. We mentioned Pitchfork. Pitchfork gave it 6 out of 5. All Music gave it 3 out of 5. And like the AV Club gave it B. Guardian gave it 4. Q gave it 3. Q gave it 3. It's year-end list. It hasn't never topped any year-end lists. Most it's got to was number 2 in AXS and Rolling Stone. Rob Sheffield's top 20 albums in 2017, and then it kind of landed in different places through that, but it didn't feel like it was like amazing. It wasn't critically received from the get-go. And again, I think I mentioned that earlier, I think it's because it was a reaction to, oh, this isn't the sound we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think, yeah, this is the stuff we mentioned before. Jeff Nelson of Consequence of Sound gave it a D+ rating, writing that Swift's sixth studio album is a bloated, moving disaster. Reputation doesn't improve past its initial singles, even if the chorus of Ready For It is one of the few vestiges of 1989 Taylor on the album. Elsewhere, Swift finds trouble, she raps, she adopts African-American vernacular English, and she bizarrely collaborates with Future. Nelson called Gorgeous, Delicate, and Call It What You Want the strongest moments of the album.
Did he listen to the album? Because I'm not sure he listened to the album.
Yeah. But I think, but on the other side, there was like, there's a few kind of slightly more positive aspects of it. Alexis Petridis of The Guardian said it may be mired in bitterness and gossip, but the pop star's songwriting smarts and lyrical prowess are impossible to deny on her sixth album, noting that the songs see Swift cutting her last ties with her Nashville roots in favour of the blare and honk of EDM influenced pop. And as you said earlier, Rob Sheffield from Rolling Stone said that it shows darker, deeper side of the pop mastermind, and as one of the all-time great pop masterminds, she's trying something new, as she always does. And I think that's one of the things I think that's appeared, I think, particularly with artists with a longer back catalogue that we've spoken on this podcast. The point being that I think at a certain point, the bands and artists do not want to be doing the same thing.
No, not.
Time.
You gotta. Every artist has to reinvent themselves, but I think especially female artists have an extra pressure to reinvent themselves and not be the same album after album after album. And if there was going to be a time where she went off of her traditional country pop sound, it was going to be this album.
Yeah, I think one of the notes I had on a song that we didn't have time to think of, and we won't have time now, was about I think it's like Dress and...
Oh yeah, Dress.
And Dress and So It Goes, where they're a lot more... The lyrics are about a lot more sexual than... And I'm assuming a lot more than perhaps previous ones. And there's a whole conversation they can have about how artists have their kind of sexual awakening, or they talk about sex a lot more openly. There's a couple of episodes of the podcast 93 Songs that I think previous guest Jenna is host of, and you've been on there as well. They cover this topic in a lot more detail. So if anyone's expecting us to talk about that, unfortunately we won't have time, but listen
they do
to
a better
those,
job anyway.
They do a better job. Yeah. And particularly on the male side of things as well. We've not covered an album yet, but I am totally stealing Sarah's Yes I Fuck category name for...
You gotta cover Justified.
Yeah. Yeah. I am totally stealing the Yes I Fuck category for albums from now on. Yeah, thanks Sarah. Anyway, but yeah, but yeah, so as people kind of grow up and as artists grow up and want to do new things, I can see perhaps how fans might not like it. Like you initially said back in the day, where he's like, "Oh, I'm not a fan of it. I don't know if I like this." But I think that's a valid criticism from fans. If you like a certain thing, and they're not doing that kind of thing, and it's quite different to what they do, that's fine. But I don't know if critics can apply the same.
Yeah, critic receptions are always so interesting because they only have like a 3-day window to review the album. They don't get to sit with it for months or even 2 weeks would be enough to like really think about it. But they're getting like the preview on Tuesday for a Friday article, and so they get to listen to it maybe 3 times. And then that's it. And now I think a lot of people have changed their mind about this album, but it's taken years.
And again, I think perhaps revisiting this post Billie Eilish debut album, I think, I do think perhaps me covering that in March or the end of the start of this year kind of helped prime me for the sound that some of this album was as well. So I think, I do think that perhaps revisiting albums, as you said, like taking time to with it, seeing the impact it has, and then going back to it. I mean, there's probably Beatles albums that people probably slated, and then
Yeah.
like 20 years down the line, like, no, actually, it's this, this, and this. So
Not so bad.
yeah, particularly with nostalgia culture as well. Like, you're gonna have people like last year who's like about, oh, it's 15 years since the debut Panic at the Disco album. This is why it's actually good. And that kind of, yeah, and this is why they should have carried on this sound. But yeah. So it's a kind of mix of things. But I mean, in terms of how it did, I mean, it still did great. I mean, I think it's a point where anything that Taylor Swift releases will do immediately. She's one of the few artists that will probably get a guaranteed number one.
I remember when it came out, everyone was saying, I mean, I wasn't, like I said, at the time I wasn't following her like close, but there were all these articles about this album's not good. She's not gonna be able to fill up her stadiums for her tours. She's over. And then she went on to sell out every single stadium she played and set some kind of, I don't remember the exact record, but it was some kind of North American touring record and her highest grossing tour ever. So shows what those guys had to say.
Yeah, so the charts, there's about 16 or 17 different countries where it got to number one in the album charts. And then it's still second, third and fourth. He got to number 6 in Poland, number 16 in France, number 17 on the US Independent Albums chart, even though he got to number 1 on the Billboard.
Weird.
And he got to number 36 on South Korea. So I'm going to assume that it was probably held off by 35 BTS albums.
Probably.
So yeah. Sorry, Jenna, if she's listening. Yeah. So again, it went 3 times platinum in Australia. It went platinum in Austria. Only sold 13,000 in France. Went gold in Italy, gold in Japan, platinum in Mexico. 2 times platinum in New Zealand, gold in Norway, platinum in Singapore, gold in Spain, platinum in Sweden, platinum in UK, 3 times platinum in the US, and 4.5 million physically sold worldwide. And again, I think a lot of albums that have reached that have been legacy albums that have covered on the podcast. So this is probably probably the most successful kind of recent albums that we've covered on this podcast, and it's ridiculous at how successful it got, considering people seemingly hated it or disliked it.
It'll be really interesting in 2023 when we get the Taylor's version released to see how it does again, because she's got a bigger fan base now. We've sat with the album for, at that point, it'll be like 5 or 6 years. So it'll be interesting to see how the re-release does.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't get it until fall of 2023.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Taylor live?
I've not, and I'm mad about it.
See, I'd assumed you had. Is there any reasons you haven't? Is it just...
When this album came out, I had just graduated college, so I was very broke. And I live like 3.5 hours from the closest stadium she would have toured. And I just I didn't go for some reason. I didn't know anyone who would want to go with me. And so I didn't go, and I regret not going. And then when she had announced the Lover tour, the closest one to me, because there were only 4 tour dates because she was doing Loverfest. The closest to me was Boston, which is 13 hours away. And so I wasn't going to go. I was like, I don't know if I want to go to Boston. And then it got canceled because of the pandemic. But now I have Swiftie friends, and we have plans to wherever she's playing, we're going when this tour gets announced. So
yeah,
it's like number 1 on my concert priority list.
Yeah, so see Taylor Swift live.
Yes,
I mean from what I've seen, online, there's an interesting mix of her on a piano or singing alongs, and then going for full on kind of spectacle. Mm-hmm. And also seemingly having cameos from people who seem to be free, who you would have thought would be very, very busy. There's a because I was watching, I think she was in Manchester or something on the Reputation tour, and she starts doing a cover of Angels by Robbie Williams, and then Robbie Williams suddenly comes up in the middle of the thing, and the whole crowd goes ridiculously
Every
loud.
town usually has a special guest, and on the 1989 tour, there's a pro shot version on YouTube. It's a very weird experience. Whoever edited it did not do a good job, but they go through all these guests that they had, and you have people like the Jonas Brothers and Selena Gomez and like all these famous people, and then one night just has can't think of her name, but Phoebe from Friends. And I was like, I'd be so mad if I went to that tour and everyone else had Ed Sheeran and I had Phoebe from Friends.
I don't know if Taylor Swift did a cover of Smelly Cat.
They did do that.
See, I'd be pissed off if I missed out that one, to be fair. And I mean, my feelings on Ed Sheeran, I'd probably be really annoyed and ask for money back if he turned up, but
he's also on my list. He's like number 2 on my list. I want to see.
Okay, yeah. I'm not much of a fan of him, and I mean, I was going to say, I was going to make a comment about the fact that he's on this album, and you've made me listen to him, but I'm going to keep it professional. But
he's got a very small feature on this album.
But other than that, it's a shame. I mean, I think the only thing that probably put me off, because I wouldn't mind perhaps seeing. I think if she perhaps was doing the songs that I know and just the songs that I know, then perhaps I wouldn't mind seeing her live. But I think also tickets will probably be stupidly expensive. Particularly
Oh yeah. It'll be interesting though seeing her tour, because her most recent releases are Folklore and Evermore, which are not like big stadium sounds, full production like Reputation or even Lover would have been. So are we going to get Loverfest that we were due in 2019 or 2020? Who knows at this point? We might get the 1989 Taylor's version tour. We'll find out when she announces it.
So what was Loverfest supposed to be?
It was supposed to be like a weekend-long music fest that was just Lover themed. I don't remember the exact details because I wasn't going to go because it was all the way in Boston. But we'll never know. Apparently she had all this stuff planned. There's a lyric in one of the Folklore songs about, having the circus all set up and the party ready to go, and then it got canceled because of the pandemic, which is actually really sad the more I think about it. But we'll never know unless she does save it to reschedule it. But it wouldn't make sense after having released these 2 indie, very mellow albums.
The singer-songwriter Frank Turner, I think over here, a few friends of mine have just been on this weekend, from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sundays, at a 4-day kind of festival, where I think he's headlining, but he's doing specific themed set lists. So yesterday he did like a full playthrough of the England Keep My Bones album, which annoyed me because it's my favourite album from him. And I got friends of mine who were there. But like he'll have like themed kind of like headline sets, and then
that would be cool.
And then like each day, like there's like a kind of a separate stage with some of his friends that play, and he'd have like different support acts. So like each day had different support acts, and like he did like a very rarity set, or a couple of years ago he did one for the 10th anniversary of an older album. I think I could perhaps see Taylor Swift being that kind of the artist that can probably do that. So like she has like a 3-day festival, and saying like the first day is going to be a sedate kind of just Folklore, Evermore kind of her and the piano, just her and the piano, whereas then the next day it's Reputation. Yeah. And then the 3rd day is all the older hits or the things that she couldn't get planned to do. So you get like a 3-day fest. I can probably see that kind of thing working for...
That would be cool.
Tennis, yeah. So like you just go for the 3-day music festival just full of Swifties, which...
We would be there.
Yeah. I can see you picturing it now, aren't you?
I am. I really am. I have my outfits planned already.
So people have listened to Reputation, and they want to move on to other albums by Taylor Swift. Where would you recommend they go? Following this.
I would go straight into Lover, because they're kind of sister albums in my mind. Especially even down to their theming, because this one, the album cover's black and white and very much a hard image, whereas Lover is pastel colors and glitter and kind of the aftermath of the Reputation fallout. So that's definitely the sister album. And then if you like more of country Taylor, I would do Fearless Taylor's version. Don't listen to the Big Red Machine owned version anymore. But if you want more Antonoff and Taylor Magic go into Folklore and Evermore, because it's 2 whole albums of them working together, and it's great.
Okay. And before we begin, I made a note earlier because I suddenly remembered a big thing from what I probably should have said about an hour ago. But You Belong With Me wasn't a big... I don't think it was big. If it was, I missed it. But the only reason I kind of knew that was... I was a massive fan of the YouTube channel College Humor. And that after the VMAs, they released a kind of parody called "You Become a Meme" to the song "You Belong With Me," and it's basically someone like Taylor Swift talking about people becoming mean. So like, there's a bit where like Rick Astley shows up and she sings a song about basically becoming a meme.
I need to go find this. I've not seen this. I'm gonna watch it. After this.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll find it and I'll send it to you because it's great. It's great. There's a whole thing with like Rick Astley as well, and
I love that.
Yeah. So, but it is also very 2009. So there's a couple of memes from 2009. If you've forgotten them, you're going to get back and stuff. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, I remember that. And I was like, I need to bring that up, and I just remember seeing this bit on my piece of paper. So yeah, and we've come to the end of our chat, Leah, and it's been nice to finally get into Taylor Swift, and I think I need to go and listen to 1989 because I've got a feeling I will like that.
Yes.
When I go to listen to it. So, but before we end, there's a couple of important things, including the most important question, which is the song for the playlist. Now, for people who haven't listened to us before, what this is I'm going to ask Leah to choose one song from this album to join the Spotify playlist and be immortalised forever. I can't veto it, so whatever she says goes. So, Leah, which song are you going to pick to be immortalised forever on the Spotify playlist?
I think I gotta go with Getaway Car.
No complaints from me.
It's a crime that we never got a music video or anything for this song.
Yeah, and so that will follow. Steps. So it's going to be Steps, and then Taylor Swift, and I can't make any hints to what's happening next because it's either going to be one of 2 different albums. So it's going to be which I'll tell you off. I'll tell you off mic.
Okay.
But I'll tell you off mic who they are. But that's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a very interesting mix to go from Getaway Car to either one of those 2. And we're at the end. No, we are actually at the end now. And I want to say thank you ever so much for coming on again. I mean, the fact that you're here for a second time means that I didn't scare you off the first time. So thank you for coming back.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is so much fun.
That's fine. And so if people want to find you and your podcast, where can they find you?
You can visit our website, shewillrockyou.com. We are available wherever you can find a podcast at this point. We're on Facebook. No one uses Facebook anymore. We're on Instagram, She Will Rock You Podcast, and Twitter, She Will Rock the letter U Pod.
Yeah. For those listening for the first time, She'll Rock You. It's yourself and your friend Bethan basically going through rock history.
Yes.
Going for rock history and basically having a bunch of interviews as well. And I think since you was last done, I think you basically skyrocketed, and I think doing really well at the moment.
We're trying. Between the interviews and our normal stuff, we stay very, very busy. We're very thankful for everyone who listens to us. So come check us out. We have a Taylor Swift episode that would pair very nicely with this.
Yes, I can't recommend She'll Rock You enough. Particularly on, because it usually arrives on a Friday, I think, every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So it's usually the thing I put on when new episodes release. It's usually what I listen to on the way home from work on a Friday. So it's part of it's one of those that's got a fixed time now. So yeah. So like about 3:30 on a Friday, I'm listening to it on the motorway. So, and with that, I'm just going to say thank you ever so much for coming on and getting me to listen to Taylor Swift.
Thanks for having me, and glad that you enjoyed it.
You've been listening to Pick a Disc, and I've been your host, Matthew Latham. Our theme music is Pump by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Pick a Disc is hosted by the We Made This podcast network, and you can find them on www.spreaker.com/user/WeMadeThis. You can find the Pick a Disc show site on www.spreaker.com/show/pickadisc. You can find us on all the usual social media type places like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter under Pick a Disc. You can also email us on pickadisc@gmail.com. Until next time, happy listening to all those discs that you are picking. Goodbye.
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you've just listened to, or maybe you're just about to listen to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling. Now, back to your scheduled programming.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Observing the Pattern, a Fringe podcast.
Maybe people weren't quite ready for it. Maybe they wanted a bit more of what the X-Files was, which was a much more of a kind of monster of the week, scare you, or this kind of myth arc, which had its emotion and certainly had its strong themes of family as well. But I think Fringe had it much more to the fore, much more kind of focused through line for it.
And Luke, that's a really good observation in terms of, like why it didn't catch on as much, because I do remember these conversations when it was airing live. And I want to say it was season 3, 4, and 5, where the fans really took to Twitter and was we're like, please renew this show.
Chucky Vision.
I think it's the most graphic of the lot of them.
I think it's the context that was just surreal. I mean, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I would react as a censor to this, because we see, as we keep saying, we see Chucky jack off, but we don't just see his reactions. There is literally a close-up shot of him grabbing his dick.
Yeah, and there's a fucking turkey baster dripping with jizz.
Oh my
How
god!
The actual fuck is this a 15?
Well, I think if you make something cartoonish enough, then you will get away with it.
and it does feel like they got away with it.
Rarely Going, an animated Star Trek podcast.
To me, the one thing that keeps coming up in these episodes is Boimler is actually a really good leader. And he's got, he actually earned his place on the Titan. It was kind of made of a joke. His transporter clone ended up getting to stay on the Titan, and he got sent back to the Cerritos and even got demoted when he did that. But, time and again in each episode this season, Boimler has proven that he has what it takes to be a good leader. He has what it takes to be a command officer. I think that...
Absolutely. Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.